Emptiness. How do we respond to emptiness? Emptiness can be a source of sadness or a source of grief, especially if that which was empty used to be full. An empty gas tank, an empty nest, an empty house, an empty classroom, an empty church. And the greatest emptiness of all, the emptiness we feel when we lose someone we love. Someone who has filled a space we didn't know we had until they were gone. When we lose someone we love, that emptiness will never be filled in the same way again. But emptiness can also be about potential for something new, for change. Emptiness offers us the ability to fill something in or fill something up. It gives us a clean slate, a blank canvas. Emptiness can be filled with something very small. Even the tiniest thing can fill the emptiness. Emptiness can be also filled with something very large. And the more the emptiness, the more it can contain. The ancient spiritual text, the Tao Te Ching, says, "We mold clay into a pot, but it is the emptiness inside that makes the vessel useful." We could say that just as we can fill emptiness with anything, we can also fill it with any attitude. The cliché question of whether the glass is half full or half empty applies for the completely empty glass as well. Is the empty glass a lack or loss of something that used to be? Are we sad that the drink is gone? Or is it an opportunity and we are looking forward to filling it with something new? The disciples at the tomb that day, and I could say the women at the tomb, but as the only ones who stood by Jesus through the crucifixion and the first with the courage to go to his tomb, while the men were hiding in fear or sulking in despair, I think these women deserve the title of disciples, at least, perhaps more than any others. So as these disciples stood at the tomb that day, they are faced with the question, what is the meaning of the emptiness? And how will they respond? It is a loss. They already feel an emptiness because Jesus has died. They feel the loss of someone who led them to a new life, who invited them to radical change, who gave their lives meaning, someone they loved. And now he has died a horrible death, and so they are filled with emptiness. They are feeling that loss. But still, they hoped that day to find a tomb that was not empty, a tomb that contained at least a body, something they can hold on to, something they could physically focus their grief upon. But no, now even the tomb is empty. Well, actually, it's not quite empty. It's just not filled with something they expect. It's not filled with a dead body. The place where the dead body should be is empty. The place where the dead body was last placed is empty. But the tomb itself, we are told, contains a young man. Now, there's much speculation on the identity of this young man. The gospel does not call him an angel, but most people assume he was an angel. What's interesting is the detail about his age, that he was young. Perhaps his youth is a hint of the way that the author of Mark is inviting us to respond to the emptiness, not just with grief, not just with sadness and despair, but with the hope and the promise of youth. The other more obvious invitation about how we might respond is the message the young man gives to the disciples. Go tell the other disciples and Peter that he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you. Yet even with these hints and instructions about how we might choose to respond to the empty tomb, the Gospel of Mark is unique in that there is no vision of the risen Christ. He's not going to appear to them as they walk along the Emmaus Road as he does in Luke. He does not appear to the women in the garden so that they can fall down at his feet and grab hold of him like they do in Matthew. He does not appear on a mountain, also in Matthew, giving the Great Commission. In John's Gospel, he has the most appearances. He's mistaken for a gardener near the tomb. He appears in the locked room twice, displaying his wounds to doubting Thomas. And he appears on the lakeshore where he is seen cooking fish over a fire. But in Mark, the risen Jesus does not appear. We don't get a vision of the risen Jesus. We just get emptiness. Not only does Mark present us with emptiness, but he shows us one way we could choose to respond to that emptiness. The women, for all their exemplary discipleship that they have exhibited thus far, respond to this emptiness with fear. They simply run away. We can't blame them. They stuck with Jesus all the way to this moment, and now when everything that they have ever known to be true about death seems to be flipped on its head, now at the very end, they finally lose their courage. Mark ends his gospel with these words that have perplexed the faithful ever since. So they went out and they fled from the tomb, for terror and amazement had seized them, and they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. They were afraid of the emptiness. And their response leaves us with the question, or even the mystery, of how the message of the resurrection ever got out if the only witnesses said nothing to anyone. The consensus among most interpreters is that Mark ends his gospel with these words intentionally, because he wants the reader to make a choice. How are you going to respond to the emptiness? You, dear reader, are the only one left. The male disciples took off a long time ago. The women disciples watched him die and pushed through that emptiness, but now, faced with an empty grave, they too have fled in fear. So now it's up to the reader of this gospel. How will you respond to the emptiness? COVID-19 and the coronavirus have given us a lot of emptiness to deal with. Empty offices, empty churches, empty roads and neighborhoods, empty store shelves. For some people, empty schedules, and for others, they're overwhelmed trying to homeschool with an empty curriculum. And of course, none of this compares in the least to that greater emptiness that we could experience of losing someone we love. How will you respond to the emptiness? First, know that grief is completely appropriate. Don't deny the grief that all this change can cause. Let yourself feel it. Grieve as you need to about the loss of however things were before the pandemic, the loss of work, of income, of schedules, of routine, of human contact, of a sense of safety out in public, of the people that we were attached to seeing, to the life that filled our time and space. Now it's gone or changed, and that hurts. Feel it and grieve that loss. And, not but, and in the midst of that grief, make some choices about how else to respond to the emptiness. Will we only grieve? Will we only be sad? Will we only see an empty glass as a symbol of what is gone? Or will we see the emptiness as an opportunity? The gospel is clear. Even the enigmatic gospel of Mark with its choose your own adventure ending is clear. The young man sits in the tomb next to the empty space and points us toward something new. He has been raised. He is not here. Look, there is the place they laid him. But go tell his disciples and Peter that he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you. Friends, hear this good news. Christ is risen. The world is full of his life. The world is full of his presence, and the world is filled with his love. And we are being given a blank canvas, an opportunity to create something new, to live differently, to be a new person, and to make a new world. We can fill it with whatever colors we choose. We can fill it with whatever people we choose. We can fill it with whatever emotions we choose. We can choose to fill the emptiness with gratitude and love and joy, because the tomb is empty and he has been raised. Will we respond only with sadness and focus only on our loss? Or will we also respond with joy at the new world we can create today and tomorrow and every day we wake up to an empty tomb and a risen Christ? Amen.